So either you can have the paper laminate cup. It's a paper fiber and it has like a wax liner on the inside. And then you have the clear cups. Most times that's something called polystyrene crystal. Neither of them can be recycled in our existing system. So when I say existing, I mean like the recycling infrastructure that we have in Ontario and in Canada. There's a lot of greenwashing that happens, and there's actually a lot of different types of pods. You have the Keurig pod, which is made out of polystyrene. There's two types. There's one that's polypropylene, one that's polystyrene. Neither of them can be readily recycled. You have the aluminum ones by Nespresso. So the aluminum pods can be recycled. However, it can only be recycled through a take-back program. The most sustainable, and I use that term kind of loosely, alternative is the compostable coffee pod. So there's instances where consumers have a choice. There is something that we can substitute for it. And the environmental footprint of those particular products are very, very bad. And really there's no positive environmental impact from using these things. So there's a company called Terracycle. They have very specific technology where they can find a use for single-use coffee cups, and they'll make something like a handbag or something very novel. And they'll tell people, hey, look, we recycled it. But that's a very, very specific instance. It's not scalable. It can't be done in our existing infrastructure. It doesn't mean you can go put a coffee cup in the blue bin. Terracycle and Nespresso say, hey, look, this is great for the environment. It's an aluminum pod. You can recycle it 100%. But what they're not telling you is that there's no actual meaningful collection infrastructure. You have, I don't know how many consumers shipping back and forth, and that negates whatever benefit you get from aluminum. And so really the barriers that we have to recovering those specific materials, so once again, the polystyrene crystal or the paper laminate cup, is that sorting infrastructure can't readily separate it out from other materials. And B is that there's nobody to send it to. If there's no market for your material, it doesn't matter whether consumers have taken the time to put it in a recycling bin, it still will get thrown in a landfill. The reality is about 30% of what we put in the blue bin gets scrapped as something called residue waste. Something called BPI, which is like a universal standard that says, yes, it's compostable. They're an independent body that evaluates it. Anybody can put anything they want on a pod. There's very little regulation in place. And that's one of the things that legislation is trying to fix. Can't be recycled, can't be composted, doesn't meet the threshold standard, but I have no obligation to the consumer to be honest to them, aside from just doing the right thing. And so there's a lot of pretenders on the market that make the conversation even more muddy. The role that single-use plastic packaging can have in reducing the amount of food waste that goes to a landfill is absolutely critical. And when you compare the aggregate life cycle impacts of, say, something that can be recycled versus these difficult to recycle lightweight plastics, you find out that even though you can't recycle it readily, it's still much better for the environment when you consider the upstream benefits of it. And so it's a very complicated question, but I find that the conversation tends to fixate on end of life, meaning that what happens once we're finished with it, when the question we should really be looking at, well, what is the life cycle of these products? And taking a life cycle approach often results in a very, very different story for a lot of items.